Have you ever looked at an old photograph, one of those black and white images from a time just before you were born, and been captivated by a single face in the crowd? A face so full of life, of mischief, and of a promise so bright it seems to leap right off the page. There's a story there, you think, a whole universe of triumphs and heartbreaks contained in that one fleeting expression. Today we're going to step into one of those photographs, into the story of a face that once captivated the entire world. A boy who, for a brilliant, blinding moment, had everything. His journey is one of dizzying heights and devastating lows, a story that serves as both a celebration of a singular talent and a profound cautionary tale about the true cost of fame. This is the story of Jack Wild. To truly understand Jack's meteoric rise, we have to transport ourselves back to the London of the late 1950s and early 1960s. This wasn't the polished modern metropolis we know today. This was a city still emerging from the long gray shadow of the Second World War. Bomb sites were still a common sight, grim reminders of the conflict that had ended less than a decade before Jack was born in 1952. But amidst the lingering austerity, a new energy was crackling in the air. A cultural revolution was brewing. The rigid class structures and stuffy traditions of the past were being challenged by a vibrant youth culture, hungry for color, for noise, for something entirely new. This was the dawn of swinging London, an era of explosive creativity in music, fashion, and art. The Beatles were about to change music forever. Mary Quant was revolutionizing fashion with the miniskirt. And on the stages of the West End, a new wave of British theater was taking hold. It was a time of immense possibility, a moment when it felt like a working-class kid with the right kind of spark could conquer the world. And it was into this world of dynamic change and burgeoning hope that Jack Wild, a spirited boy from Hounslow in West London, was about to make his entrance. His beginnings were entirely ordinary. He wasn't born into a theatrical dynasty or groomed for stardom from birth. He was the son of a laborer, living a typical working-class childhood. By all accounts, he was a bundle of raw, unchanneled energy. His passion wasn't the stage, it was the football pitch. He lived and breathed the sport, spending his days kicking a ball around with his mates in a local park. It was there, amidst the shouts and the scuffed knees of a chaotic children's game, that destiny, in a most unlikely form, found him. The person who spotted him wasn't a casting director or a famous producer, but a woman named June Collins. Now, that name might not be immediately familiar, but her son certainly is. June Collins was the mother of a young, aspiring musician named Phil Collins. She ran a stage school, and she had a preternatural eye for raw talent. Watching young Jack play, she saw something more than just a boisterous kid. She saw a natural performer, a charisma that couldn't be manufactured, an infectious spark in his eyes. She approached his parents and suggested, almost on a whim, that he and his brother Arthur should enroll in her school. It was a long shot, a step into a completely alien world for the Wild family. But they agreed. This single chance encounter in a London park set in motion a chain of events that would transform Jack Wild from an anonymous schoolboy into an international star. His training was brief. Jack wasn't a polished product of the stage school system. His talent was intuitive, instinctual. He soon landed a role that would become the cornerstone of his entire life, the role that would define him, elevate him, and ultimately cast a shadow he could never quite escape. He was cast as the Artful Dodger in the original West End stage production of Lionel Bart's musical sensation, Oliver. It's hard to overstate what a phenomenon Oliver was. It took Charles Dickens's dark, sprawling novel about an orphan's journey through the London underworld and transformed it into a vibrant, heartbreaking, and ultimately uplifting piece of musical theater. And at the heart of it was the character of the Artful Dodger, the charismatic, cocky, and charming leader of Fagin's gang of child pickpockets. The role required a performer with immense confidence, a razor-sharp wit, and an undeniable stage presence. It was a role that seemed tailor-made for Jack Wilde. Night after night, he stole the show. His energy was boundless, his comic timing was impeccable, and he embodied the swagger and street-smart savvy of the Dodger with an authenticity that was simply astonishing for a boy his age. He wasn't just reciting lines, he was inhabiting a character, and audiences adored him for it. He became one of the biggest draws of the London production, a tiny powerhouse holding his own against seasoned adult actors. But the West End stage was just the beginning. The overwhelming success of the musical inevitably led to a big-budget film adaptation in 1968, directed by the legendary Carol Reed. The production was a massive undertaking, and the search for the perfect cast was global. For the role of Oliver, they found a sweet-faced, angelic-looking boy named Mark Lester. For Fagin, the great Ron Moody reprised his iconic stage role. And when it came to casting the Artful Dodger, there was really only one choice. The producers knew they needed someone who could replicate that same lightning-in-a-bottle energy that had captivated London theatergoers. They needed Jack Wilde. The transition from stage to screen can be difficult for many actors, but for Jack it was seamless. If anything, the intimacy of the camera amplified his natural charisma. His performance in the film is, to this day, a masterclass in child acting. Watch him during the iconic Consider Yourself sequence. He struts through the bustling London market set with an infectious, self-assured swagger, his every movement brimming with character. There's a glint in his eye, a mischievous curl of his lip, that is utterly captivating. He's not just performing a song, he's leading a parade, welcoming Oliver into his world with a confidence that is both endearing and slightly dangerous. He managed to perfectly balance the Dodger's bravado with a subtle undercurrent of vulnerability. You believed he was a tough, streetwise kid who had seen it all, but you also sensed the child beneath the cynical exterior. His on-screen chemistry with Mark Lester was palpable. Their friendship felt genuine, forming the emotional core of the film's first half. Jack, the seasoned professional at this point, reportedly took the more inexperienced Lester under his wing, their real-life camaraderie translating beautifully onto the screen. The film, Oliver! Was a monumental success. It was a critical and commercial triumph, a cinematic event that swept the globe. It went on to win 6 Academy Awards, including the coveted Best Picture. And amidst the celebration for this cinematic masterpiece, a special kind of recognition was reserved for its young breakout star. At the tender age of 16, Jack Wilde received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Let that sink in. A teenager from Hounslow, who just a few years earlier was kicking a football in a park, was now being celebrated on the world's most prestigious stage, nominated alongside Hollywood royalty. It was a fairy tale ending, the kind of story that movies are made of. He was flown to Los Angeles, walked the red carpet, and sat in an auditorium filled with his idols. He didn't win the award that night. It went to Jack Albertson, for the subject was roses. But it didn't matter. The nomination itself was the victory. Jack Wilde was officially a star. Fame, when it arrives so suddenly and with such force, can be a disorienting whirlwind. For Jack, life was transformed overnight. He was no longer just an actor. He was a teen idol. His face adorned the covers of countless magazines. His posters were pinned to the bedroom walls of teenagers across the world. He was mobbed by screaming fans wherever he went. The success of Oliver led to another career-defining, though decidedly more bizarre, project. American television producers Sid and Marty Krofft, known for their surreal and psychedelic children's shows, saw Jack's star power and cast him as the lead in their new series, H.R. Pufnstuf. Jack played Jimmy, a boy who gets shipwrecked on a magical island inhabited by talking dragons, witches, and a friendly, oversized mayor named H.R. Pufnstuf. The show was a riot of color, puppetry, and bizarre musical numbers, a perfect slice of late 60s psychedelia. It cemented his fame in the United States and turned him into a household name for a generation of young viewers. He even recorded a few pop albums, capitalizing on his musical talents and heartthrob status. On the surface, it seemed he had it all: critical acclaim, commercial success, and the adoration of millions. He was living a life that most people could only dream of. But beneath the glittering surface of this teenage dream, a much darker reality was beginning to take hold. The problem with a peak as high as an Oscar nomination at 16 is that there's often nowhere to go but down. And for Jack, the descent was tragically accelerated by the very environment that had made him a star. The world of show business in the late 60s and early 70s was not a place that prioritized the well-being of its child stars. Jack was, for all intents and purposes, living an adult's life. He was attending lavish industry parties, surrounded by adults, and exposed to a lifestyle far beyond his years. And it was at these parties, surrounded by temptation and lacking the guidance to navigate it, that he began to develop the habits that would ultimately derail his life. He later confessed that he had started smoking at the age of 12 and was drinking heavily not long after. It began as a way to seem more grown up, to fit in with the older actors and crew members. But what started as a misguided attempt at sophistication quickly spiraled into a dependency. By his early 20s, Jack Wild was a full-blown alcoholic. The immense pressure of being a public figure, the struggle to transition from a child star to a serious adult actor, and the constant fear of his fame fading away all created a perfect storm of anxiety and insecurity. It's a specific kind of purgatory reserved for those who achieve too much, too soon. He was stuck in a professional limbo, no longer the cherubic boy wonder of Oliver, but not yet seen as a credible adult leading man. Casting directors would look at him and see only the ghost of the Dodger, a ghost he was desperately trying to outgrow. Every audition became a battle against his own past. Imagine the quiet frustration of that, trying to prove your range when everyone has already decided who you are. Alcohol became his crutch, his escape from the overwhelming reality of his life. The social scene of the early 1970s certainly didn't help. It was an era of excess, and a young, famous, and wealthy actor was expected to be at the heart of the party. For Jack, these parties were both a temptation and a refuge. In those moments, with a drink in his hand, he wasn't the former child star struggling with his next career move. He was just one of the crowd. The pressure momentarily lifted. He was once asked in a later interview why he started drinking so heavily, and his answer was heartbreakingly simple. He said, "The main problem was that I had a lot of spare time on my hands, and I was a millionaire at 17. That statement is a universe of tragedy in a single sentence. It was a life of too much, too soon, too much money, too much fame, too much unstructured time, and not nearly enough of the grounding, normal experiences of adolescence, like making mistakes in private, figuring out who you are away from the public gaze, or learning the value of a pound earned through a hard day's work that help a young person build a stable sense of self." The consequences for his career were catastrophic. The bright, energetic, professional young actor who had charmed the world was replaced by an unreliable and struggling man. He would show up to set late or not at all. He had trouble remembering his lines, a devastating failing for an actor, chipping away at his confidence with every forgotten word. His physical appearance began to show the strain of his addiction. The boyish good looks became bloated and puffy, his movements less sharp. Most tragically, the spark in his eyes, that unique, mischievous glint that had made him a star, began to dull. Word travels with brutal speed in the film industry, and soon the phone stopped ringing. The major film roles completely vanished, replaced by a string of forgettable B-movies and minor television guest spots throughout the 1970s and 1980s. He appeared in films like The 14, a bleak drama, and took a role in the period sex farce Keep It Up Downstairs, projects a world away from the prestige of an Oscar-nominated picture. He was still working, but it was a shadow of his former career, a descent into professional obscurity that must have been agonizing. He was trapped in a tragic loop. His drinking cost him good roles, and the lack of good roles, the quiet humiliation of accepting parts he knew were beneath his talent, deepened his despair, which in turn fueled his drinking. He was haunted by the ghost of the Artful Dodger. That role, the source of his greatest triumph, became an albatross around his neck, a constant, silent reminder of a height he could never reach again. He was typecast, forever seen as the cheeky Cockney kid, even as he stumbled into his 30s, a man battling a devastating disease. He lost his fortune, his fame, and very nearly his life. This period of his life is filled with stories of personal and professional turmoil. His first marriage to his childhood sweetheart, Gaynor Jones, crumbled under the immense strain of his addiction and erratic lifestyle. His fortune, which once seemed limitless to a teenager, evaporated through a combination of reckless spending, poor financial advice, and a dramatically reduced income. The cars, the parties, the lavish gifts, it all disappeared, leaving him in a precarious financial state. He became a fixture in the notoriously cruel British tabloids, no longer celebrated for his talent but sensationalized for his downfall. He was photographed looking unwell, his personal struggles laid bare for public judgment. Each headline was another twist of the knife, cementing his public image as a has-been, a failure. It's the classic tragic Hollywood narrative, the child star who couldn't handle the fame and crashed and burned. But to end the story, there would be to miss the most remarkable chapter of Jack Wilde's life. Because his story is not just one of decline, it is profoundly one of resilience and redemption. By the late 1980s, Jack Wilde had hit rock bottom. He had alienated friends, destroyed his career, and was facing serious health problems. It was in this moment of utter desperation that he found the strength to make a change. In 1988, after years of failed attempts, he finally committed to sobriety. He joined Alcoholics Anonymous and began the long, arduous process of confronting his demons and rebuilding his life from the ground up. This was a battle fought far away from the glamour of the film set, a quiet daily struggle for survival. He spoke about this period with a raw, unflinching honesty. He admitted his failings, took responsibility for his actions, and dedicated himself to his recovery with a tenacity that was truly inspiring. He knew he had thrown away the golden opportunities of his youth, but he was determined not to throw away the rest of his life. Sobriety brought with it a new clarity and a renewed passion for his craft. He knew he would never again be the leading man or the teen idol, but he didn't care. He simply wanted to act. He embraced the life of a character actor, taking on smaller, more interesting roles that allowed him to showcase a maturity and depth that his earlier work had only hinted at. And slowly, the industry that had once turned its back on him began to welcome him back. One of his most notable comeback roles was in the 1991 blockbuster Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, starring Kevin Costner. He played Much, one of the merry men, and although it was a supporting role, it was a significant one. It put him back in a major Hollywood production, and he delivered a solid professional performance. He was reliable, he was talented, and most importantly, he was sober. He continued to work steadily throughout the 1990s, in film, television, and on stage, earning the respect of his peers not just for his talent, but for the incredible personal journey he had undertaken. He had stared into the abyss and had found his way back. But the years of hard living had inflicted a terrible, irreversible price on his body. The decades of heavy smoking and drinking had been a ticking time bomb, and in 2000, that bomb went off. Jack was diagnosed with oral cancer. It was a cruel and devastating blow. After fighting so hard to reclaim his life from addiction, he was now faced with a battle for his life itself. He confronted the disease with the same courage and lack of self-pity that had defined his recovery. He underwent grueling rounds of chemotherapy and radiation, but the cancer was aggressive. In 2004, he had to undergo a radical surgery known as a partial glossectomy and laryngectomy. The procedure involved removing his tongue, his vocal cords, and part of his jaw. The surgery saved his life, but it took away his voice. For an actor, the voice is a fundamental tool. To lose it is to lose a core part of one's ability to communicate, to perform. For Jack, a man who had captivated the world with his cheeky line delivery and his singing, the loss was unimaginable. He could no longer speak, and he could no longer eat solid food, relying on a feeding tube for sustenance. It would have been completely understandable if he had chosen to retreat from the public eye to live out his remaining time in private. But that wasn't Jack Wild. In a remarkable display of indomitable spirit, he refused to let his silence define him. He continued to act. He learned to communicate through gestures, through his incredibly expressive eyes, and through the sheer force of his presence. He even found a way to see the grim humor in his situation. Shortly after his surgery, he was quoted as saying, "My life is good. The only thing I miss is not being able to speak to my wife, Claire, and telling her I love you. But she knows." He found love and stability in his later years with his wife, Claire, who was a steadfast source of support throughout his illness. Their relationship was a testament to a love that went far beyond words. His final performances were a powerful testament to his spirit. He took on roles that embraced his new reality, playing mute characters and conveying a world of emotion without uttering a single sound. He even returned to the stage, appearing in pantomime, a British theatrical tradition, using a pre-recorded voice and his incredible physical comedy skills to entertain audiences. He was sending a powerful message. He was still an actor, he was still a performer, and he would not be defeated. His story had moved beyond the simple narrative of a fallen star. It had become a profound exploration of human endurance. Jack Wild passed away on March 1st, 2006. He was only 53 years old. In his final moments, he was at his home, surrounded by the love and comfort of his family, particularly his devoted wife, Claire. His passing was quiet and dignified, a stark contrast to the turbulent, chaotic years of his young adulthood. But even in this tragic end, there was a sense of profound closure. The cancer that took his life was a direct and final consequence of the lifestyle he had chosen as a child, a painful full stop to a chapter he had fought so hard to close. His life is a complex legacy, one that resists easy categorization. On one hand, it is undeniably a tragedy. He was a prodigious talent whose full potential was squandered due to the pressures of early fame and the ravages of addiction. His story is a stark reminder of the dark side of Hollywood, a system that so often builds up child stars only to abandon them when they are no longer cute or profitable. It raises difficult questions about the duty of care the industry has towards its young performers, questions that are still relevant today. We see echoes of Jack's story in the lives of many other child stars who struggled to navigate the treacherous waters of fame, from Judy Garland to Macaulay Culkin. It's a recurring, heartbreaking pattern, a cruel price paid by those who are made to grow up too quickly in the blinding glare of the public eye. Jack's life serves as one of the most poignant examples of this phenomenon, a lesson in what can happen when a child is given the keys to the kingdom without any real guidance. But on the other hand, to see his life only as a tragedy is to miss the incredible strength and resilience he demonstrated. His is also a story of survival, of a man who fought his way back from the brink not once but twice. He overcame a crippling addiction and then faced a terminal illness with a grace and courage that was nothing short of heroic. He never blamed the world for his problems. He was honest, and in his honesty he found a new kind of power. He wasn't a victim, he was a survivor. In his later interviews, he took full responsibility for his choices, expressing a deep gratitude for the life he had been given, both the good and the bad. His journey of sobriety and self-acceptance became a quiet triumph, a testament to the idea that it is never too late to turn your life around. There is a rarely mentioned quote from him that perfectly encapsulates his final perspective. After all the struggles, all the losses, he said, I wouldn't have done it any different. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through. I'm one of the lucky ones. To be able to say that after everything he had endured speaks volumes about his character. He saw his struggles not as a curse, but as a crucible that forged him into the man he became, a man with a message of hope for others. He found a new sense of purpose in his later years, using his own story to help others with addiction. He had learned that true fortune wasn't in fame or money, but in self-acceptance and a clear conscience. So, what is the ultimate significance of Jack Wilde's story? It's a powerful lesson in duality. It teaches us that a life can contain both immense success and profound failure, both heartbreaking weakness and incredible strength. He was the Oscar-nominated star, and he was the struggling alcoholic. He was the teen idol, and he was the man who lost his voice to cancer. He was all of these things. His life wasn't a fairy tale with a simple happy ending, nor was it a straightforward tragedy. It was something far more real, more complicated, and ultimately more human. It was a life lived in all its messy, beautiful, and heartbreaking glory. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the extraordinary life of Jack Wilde. His story is a poignant one, and it leaves us with much to think about. If you have any memories of his work or thoughts on his life, please share them in the comments below. We truly appreciate hearing your perspectives. If you found this video meaningful, please consider liking and subscribing for more stories that explore the complex lives behind the public figures we think we know.